Hello, everyone. Good morning, good day, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Roxana. I work in comms at IIED. We'll be beginning in a few minutes, just letting people trickle in. But thank you so much for joining us today for our conversation on envisioning community-led feminist gender and heat data systems for urban climate justice, led by IIED and our partners. I'll just run quickly through our agenda today. So we'll start with some opening notes from Karen Wong, she's a senior researcher with us at IIED. Then we'll go into an interactive session with the use of Mentimeter. Then we'll start our great panel of discussion. So we'll begin with a global analysis on gender and heat. And then we're here from grassroots perspectives. We have partners joining us from Zimbabwe, Kenya, and Tanzania. And after that, we'll have a Q&A session where you'll get the chance to say your thoughts or ask any questions on the great presentations that we've had. And then we'll move on to the final section of our meeting, which is an institutional perspectives. And then we'll finish with a call to action and closing remarks. So with that, to crack on, I'll pass over to my colleague, Karen, who will give us some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Roxana. And as you said, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where are you joining us. My name is Karen Wong. I work with the International Institute for Environment and Development, or IIED, and it is a true, real pleasure to welcome you all to this parallel event at the 70th session of the CSW. As you know, this year's CSW's discussions focus strongly on questions on justice, women's leadership and participation, and the structural barriers affecting women and girls. These issues resonate deeply with the realities communities are facing on the front lines of climate change. Across cities around the world, and particularly in rapidly growing urban areas of the Global South, climate change is intensifying risks such as flooding, water scarcity, and increasingly extreme heat. But we know that these impacts are not experienced equally. They intersect with existing social and economic inequalities, including gender norms and roles that shape how people experience environmental risks in their daily lives. In many informal settlement contexts, women play central roles in managing households, caring for family members, securing water and energy, and sustaining livelihoods within the informal economy. These responsibilities often mean that women experience climate impacts such as extreme heat in particular ways. But at the same time, women are not only experiencing these challenges, they are actively responding to them, developing practical solutions, organizing collectively, and generating knowledge about the changes affecting their communities. However, these experiences and insights and their knowledge are often missing from the data that informs climate policy and urban policy. This brings us to the focus of today's event. Today's discussion sits within a broader initiative that IIED and partners have been advancing on closing the gender environment data gap and strengthening the role of community-led and feminist approaches to generating and using data. Last year, during CSW 69, we organized 2 events under this initiative that explore the importance of better integrating gender and environment data. In those conversations, we highlighted the need to what we described as a whole-of-society approach to data systems. One of the key messages from those discussions was that communities themselves are essential producers of knowledge. Grassroots organizations, women's networks, and local federations are already collecting, analyzing, and using data to better understand climate risk and advocate for their own solutions. So building on that momentum, we have been working closely with partners, including Slum Dwellers International, affiliates, and their support organizations to document community-led approaches to generating gender-responsive climate data, with a particular focus on extreme heat in informal settlements. As part of this work today, with you all here, we are launching 3 new online case studies developed through this collaboration in Kenya, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. These studies will be described in the panel and described also by my colleague Marcelle, who has been leading this work. These studies explore different dimensions of how extreme heat is experienced and negotiated in everyday life, from the heat impacts of cooking practices in informal settlements in Dar es Salaam to the intersection between heat and menstrual health in Nairobi's Mathare settlement, and the invisible burden of heat and water access in communities in Zimbabwe. What these experiences highlight is not only the differentiated impacts of climate change, but also, and most importantly, the leadership of grassroots organizations and women-led community networks in producing evidence and advancing locally grounded solutions. At IIED, we believe that addressing climate and gender injustices require not only data, but more socially just ways of producing and valuing knowledge, and that we recognize communities as leaders in generating evidence needed for more equitable and effective climate action. So thank you again for joining us today. And with no more ado, we would like to start grounding our discussion with a short interactive exercise. And I am very pleased to hand over to Marcelle Mardon, researcher from IIED, who has been leading this work and who will guide us through the Mentimeter activity to hear from your own experiences on extreme heat. Marcelle, over to you.
Thanks so much, Karen. Welcome, everyone. Really, really happy to have you, whether you're coming into morning, afternoon, or evening. We move straight into an interactive session. And just before I say that, as Karen's already introduced me, I'm a researcher at IIED, and I've been working with our partners who will be presenting their work today across different parts of the African continent. So yeah, just wanting to place us all in the same shoes, I suppose, and just get us thinking about climate risks and heat in particular. We're having this interactive session. Okay, so here we go. We have people coming in, and we can see we have people from across Europe, mainly Spain, France, Germany, United States as well, Kenya, Nairobi, of course, UK, Zimbabwe, fantastic. Zambia, India, wonderful, Bilbao as well. Manchester, more local to the UK. Haven't yet seen more people from, look, Zurich is there as well, New York, Denmark. Great. Mostly our guests and participants today are also from UK. Thank you so much. Okay, so moving on to the organizations. We've included a variety of organizations that you may be coming from. We have community-based organizations, civil society, research or academic, perhaps from government. We can already see that we have a lot of people from NGOs, 5. We have 4 different responses, research and academic. At the moment, most of you are from civil society NGOs. No one from private sector, interestingly enough. And we have also people from UN agencies too. Yeah, it's interesting to see who is interested in the work that we've been doing. Thank you so much for participating in that. And then also, so this is the more personal part from your experiences. So these are a wide range of different experiences that we understand are significantly impacting women and girls in cities around climate extreme heat. And we have, on the higher end, we have health, indeed. Increased care, responsibilities, indeed, we have that too. And then livelihoods, we have water challenges, safety risks. Please do feel free to be more precise with your answers in the chat box if you'd like. And we've got housing conditions and other. These all correlate significantly with the work and the data that we have been finding. There's some correlations in terms of numbers. Hilaria, you're from Bilbao. You've got government and public sector. Thanks, Hilaria, from Bilbao. And then finally, the interesting bit as well is trying to understand what people's concepts around responses and solutions might be. So what kind of support is most needed to advance gender responsive solutions to extreme heat? So we have quite well, there we go, funding. Yes, of course, that's funding is the main issue, especially for people that live in informal settlements, the more vulnerable populations where access sometimes to support is more difficult. We have financial, again, there we have housing conditions, the promotion of local solutions. That's an interesting one when we say promotion. Reforestation, yes, nature-based solutions as well. Voices from the ground, indeed, agency. That's one of the things that is key to our work as well. Heat-specific impacts, awareness raising, public services, and the promotion again of local solutions. There's another one. But more generally, it looks like capital, finance, funding seems to be the more significant space for shifting those challenges. We also have better infrastructure. Yes, and someone has also included heat-specific impacts. While we're speaking specifically to heat today, we understand that these are all often interconnected. Flooding, wind, drought are all issues that sometimes overlap also the work that we have been looking at. So thank you so much for that. Not wanting to take up too much time for this. On the interactive session, we now move to an overview looking at gender and heat, and we'd like to invite our first guest into this panel. So I'd like to introduce you today to Venge Nyirongo who's an intergovernmentalist specialist from the Climate Change, Sustainable Development and Rio Conventions at UN Women. Venge, thank you so much for coming. Just to give a little bit of background on your work, as I suggested, you're working at support section in the organization's focal point for the Rio Convention, Small Island Developing States, and you support agency-wide work on gender and climate environment nexus. You have extensive experience in women's economic empowerment in the context of sustainable development, rural development, and management of multi-stakeholder coalitions and economic justice and rights, working for gender equality, and importantly, for people and planet. Welcome, Venge. Please can I hand over to you now?
Thank you so much, Marcelle, and really extending my gratitude to the whole IIED team for inviting UN Women to be a part of this webinar. Extreme heat is of growing interest to our organization, and so we're really, really happy to be a part of this growing network that is looking and investigating more around the intersections between gender equality and heat stress. So today the presentation I'm going to make is going to be based on some research that I have done over the past several months on gender differentiated and age-specific risks of heat stress in a warming world, implications for equality and resilience. And I just wanted to say that there will be a part of the presentation where I'm trying to link some of this work that we've done with the issues around community-generated data, which kind of gets us into connections with the work that you're going to be presenting on the cases today. So, right. So, just in terms of framing extreme heat, I think Karen has given a very good overview already. It's a growing global threat, increasingly affecting rural and urban populations in the global north and south. What this research has done is to really dig into the different impacts in developed as well as developing countries, and we're about to see how and why that happens. In terms of vulnerabilities, of course, we do see differentiations across genders, women and girls facing unique risks due to caregiving roles and resource access, social norms and others that play a role. And but at the same time, men do also face risks through various avenues, including outdoor labor. Addressing heat has gender and social injustice is a gender and social injustice issue, and it focuses on power, equity, equality, inclusive decision making, and the whole gambit. In terms of solutions, effective heat adaptation will require feminist data, governance, and community-led transformation adaptation approaches, as we'll see a little bit later. So next slide, please. Why are we looking at this now? Extreme heat is causing more deaths annually than floods, storms, and other climate-induced threats, posing an important global health issue. For example, in the 2003 French heat wave, women's heat-related mortality was actually 15% higher than men's in the same age groups, showing that gendered risk is long-standing and measurable, and that it can also manifest in places where the infrastructure is available and ready to support. The planet is warming up, and we know that 2024 was probably the hottest on record, and 2025 followed a close second. And this is causing increased frequency and intensity with every 0.5 degrees Celsius of rise in temperatures. In urban areas, the heat island effect is real and intensifies heat in dense neighborhoods, which severely impacts vulnerable populations. And I think some of the things we'll hear from the case studies will best manifest. And then we know that we do have a moral and development obligation as addressing extreme heat is essential for achieving justice, protecting those least responsible from disproportionate harm. Now, as a gendered and an equal risk, exposure to heat tells us that women face higher heat exposure due to unpaid care work and poorly cooled homes, while men, of course, are also experiencing exposure in outdoor physical jobs that they do, especially on farms. We know that both men and women working in indoor spaces that are heated, like in manufacturing plants and garment factories, also do face heightened risks. Poverty has a major role to play in mitigating as well as adapting to heat. Women often have limited access to cooling technologies. They have limited access to healthcare, and decision-making power dynamics means that their vulnerability to heat stress is elevated. Some examples in South Africa and France indicate that in South Africa, intimate partner violence as well as gender-based violence within the homestead do intensify with rising heat. And in France, of course, we, again, looking at the 2003 data that's available, we see that physiological constraints among older women combined with social factors like living alone that are very important in adaptation. Social norms and health outcomes also play a role, where gender norms may discourage men from seeking help for heat stress. It may also lead them into machoing it out and taking on more dangerous activities, while women's restricted mobility limits adaptive measures and shaping unequal health outcomes. In terms of policy formulation around these issues, we want to look at understanding heat risks through a gender lens as being vital for creating inclusive policies that will promote fairness and resilience for everyone. Now, when discussing heat, we find that it's almost impossible to separate the biological dimensions because they do intimately interact with the socioeconomic conditions that people live in. And so in terms of heat response, women, and we're finding that especially in postmenopausal stages, have reduced sweating and cardiovascular efficiency, which does increase their heat vulnerability. Women that are pregnant, they produce more metabolic heat and require more hydration, increasing their susceptibility to heat stress. In the United States, for example, we find that exposure to extreme heat in late pregnancy has been linked to increased preterm births, including a California study that shows heightened risk in especially the week before delivery. For men, there are risks linked to reduced sperm quality and higher rates of exertional heat stroke that are linked to heat exposure, especially in occupational settings. And the interactions between the biology and social settings show us that biological heat vulnerabilities are influenced by social economic conditions, as I had said earlier. When you also look at healthcare access and adaptive capacity, there are direct implications. Next slide, please. So what's the double heat burden, and how do gender roles manifest in this, through the responsibilities that people take on an everyday basis? Women do experience this double heat burden from work because of their exposure to hot conditions as they undertake unpaid domestic labor, and especially doing this in poorly cooled homes and workplaces, like kitchens, for example, working under heat and working with fires and so on actually exacerbate the long-term or chronic impacts that heat is going to have on their health. In South Africa, we actually see that performing unpaid care work, including tending to children and elders in poorly cooled homes, rises sharply during heat waves and deepening the double heat burden. In Ethiopia, of course, we looked at farming, and here we see that farmers increasingly undertake manual irrigation during drought periods, often at peak heat hours, just so they can have their fields watered. Climate change is an important factor driving intensification of heat exposure, and it's increasing droughts, water scarcity, and physical labor during hot hours. We see also, very importantly, that women's unpaid informal labor is often invisible in labor statistics and heat adaptation policies. And with these issues, we need for more equitable adaptation by recognizing and valuing women's heat exposure as being important. Now, in urban areas, I did talk about the urban heat island effect. And I think here, just to share that in informal settlements in South Africa, for example, compounded heat does raise risks due to poor ventilation, high population density, and restricted mobility. And you look at the interaction with poor construction materials, dense construction, and limited vegetation being major factors. We also looked at barriers to cooling access. And here, I think I just wanted to mention what is called passive cooling, which is achieved through planting of vegetation, trees, and those that would actually offer relief during heat waves using more or less a nature-based solution approach. Next slide, please. There are various gender, age, and compounded vulnerabilities, of course, impacts on infants and caregivers' vulnerability. There are also gendered impacts in the adolescent phase, but also there are, of course, impacts on other adults that I have already talked about. And that this actually means that we need even more complex and tailored targeted interventions in trying to address for and minimizing risk. There are economic and labor impacts. I think I did talk about these a lot more, and just here to highlight that heat stress could actually cut global working hours by 2.2% by 2030, risking about 80 million full-time jobs, mainly in vulnerable sectors, according to the ILO. And it's also a macroeconomic issue when you look at impacts on the healthcare system, infrastructure, and looking at how maternal and child health services need to be designed to respond to heat-specific impacts. Adaptation looks at addressing workplace heat protections, urban cooling investments, including passive cooling, which may be cheaper and more practical in densely populated spaces. And of course, where possible, to look at inclusive social protection and ensuring that at every stage, women's participation and leadership are considered. In terms of data, just wanted to share a little bit that community-generated and context-specific evidence is crucial. And we want to make sure that we link these data sources with municipalities and national authorities so that they can actually integrate this feminist community-generated evidence in national policy and programmatic making, and looking at driving inclusive planning and equitable investment in data is very crucial. We want to see transformation of urban governance through better accountability, and I think the work that you're doing at IIED is very crucial here, and ensuring that we center women's and community agents as central to the achievement of justice. And I do believe I have a last slide, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, community data is going to be a strong pathway to heat justice. We need to understand the complexity of heat impacts because they're not easy to detect, being that it's a very slow, insidious process that's also very difficult to distinguish from other, especially in health, the impacts on the biological and physiological operations of people's bodies. Of course, we need to make sure that we're looking at rights to cooling and dignity and ensuring that women are involved in data governance, a point that I had already made. So I'm going to stop there, and thank you so much again for having me. Yeah.
That was
just to say that
absolutely
this research is
amazing.
going to be available soon, so we'll let you know when it's out and ready.
Thank you so much, Venge, for that incredible presentation. There's just so much packed in there, and we look forward to hearing more about your research. And if it's okay with you, maybe we can share your slides with the participants after the event. That would be great. I'm sure I've had a lot of people already messaging me saying this is super interesting. And I think just linking into the next part of our work that ties in really well, pretty much with what you're highlighting, that there are clear parallels between the impacts of heat, particularly on men and women, differentiated. So we need this data. There's a lack of disaggregated and intersectional data that allows us to understand these heat exposures, the experiences, impacts, and also, as you highlighted, those coping mechanisms that are often invisible amongst the poor and invisible communities. And I think that leads us very nicely into the work that we've been carrying out at IIED more generally. We started working in 2024 around heat measurement work in 3 countries. And this work started essentially through our Climate Action for Resilient Cities, a task team within IIED that has also just published a report. More broadly, we have Wayne Shand and all our partners here as well who've been involved in that work, so we can share that with you also. And more precisely to this work is the work that we've managed to plug in the last 2 years as well from the Gender Data Task Team, which is essentially looking at the gender responsiveness of this work, and that has allowed us to carry out these case studies that you'll be hearing about today across 3 cities in Dar es Salaam, in Tanzania, Nairobi, Kenya, and Kariba in Zimbabwe. So I'd like to welcome the partners, the grassroots movement, Slum Dwellers International. We have representatives from the community. We have Nancy, who is a resident in Dar es Salaam, and we have some community researchers also from NGOs who support that work. For those who don't know the work of SDI, it's affiliates across more than 17 countries in Africa that work specifically in informal settlement contexts, working with communities to empower and find agency through data collection. And so today we're going to hear from them directly. As you all know, this is the launch of the case studies, the first case studies that we're producing together with these communities. So I'd like to introduce our panelists today. We have 2 from the Kenyan context. We have Marcelle, Koyaro, Nancy, and Njoki. Marcelle is working at the SDI Kenya affiliate group, and Nancy is from Muungano wa Wanavijiji, the federation, the Kenyan federations, mobilized communities within Matare specifically, where we've been working. We also have Mussa Raido, who is a researcher at CCI Tanzania, and we have Teo from Dialogue on Shelter in Zimbabwe. So I have 2 key questions to ask in the round of the panelists, perhaps asking you first, starting with you first, Marcelle. The first question is, can you tell us how is extreme heat impacting women in your community, and what solutions are they advancing? Just building on from Venge's explanations about experiences, about impacts specifically around heat. Please let us know what is the work that you're doing there, and how is it for your communities in Matare?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Marcelle. I think, as you have mentioned, my name is Marcelle Koyaro. I am an urban planner working with SDI Kenya. And for us, basically how we saw heat impacting the women, you'll find that, first of all, within the context of Madare, majority of the household units are made of iron sheet materials. And you'll find that with this context, they act as heat traps. And based on the research that we did, it showed that during the hotter periods, the indoor temperature can even go up to about 39 degrees Celsius, which is almost 9 degrees higher than the outdoor temperatures. And you'll find that for this, especially for women and girls, this is not just a matter of discomfort, but also adds another layer of vulnerability to it. And through this research, we were able to just document how the extreme heat exposure affects the women's biological cycles. And just from the focus group discussions that we were able to do, or rather the findings were showcasing how the menstrual flows of women become heavier, and also their cycles tend to last longer, sometimes even extending beyond the 5 to 7 days period. So you'll find that with this, it creates a certain need of getting more sanitary products, and therefore they are forced to chip in an extra cost that is like 200 to 300 Kenyan shillings every month. And you'll find that majority of them earn around 10,000 Kenyan shillings and below. So you'll find that this becomes a hard choice, because you have to choose either between buying extra sanitary products or ensuring that your food has just adequate or sufficient food for that particular day or that particular week. And you'll find that in some instances where women have tried to adapt to using the reusable sanitary products, they also face sort of a hidden cost. So you'll find that with these reusable products, you also need to have quite a lot of water. You need to have soap, which also adds another layer, because they have to also now chip in an extra 200 Kenyan shillings per month, which could have gone somewhere within their needs. So you'll find that because of this issue, or this creates a sort of a poverty penalty issue, majority of them or some of them are even just forced to either use pieces of cloth, or they delay in changing their sanitary products, which can lead to actually infections or skin irritations on the same. So you'll find that with this, they realize that in as much as the heat exposure is affecting their menstrual cycle, they needed to also just do something within their structural unit. So that means sort of modifying where they live. And you'll find, for instance, some of the solutions that they're trying to do right now, some of them are insulating their household units with sacks or plywood, just to be able to cover the iron sheet walling material. But also for others, right now, instead of cooking indoor with either the charcoal jikos or just the different fuels that they're using, you'll find that now they're cooking outdoor. In some instances, they're also encouraging cold showers. But one thing that was also quite of great importance is they mentioned that they're adjusting their diets. So for them, they realized that if they take quite a lot of sugar, then sugar also contributes towards the increase in internal body temperature. So with that, they are sort of reducing the sugar intake, so that again, they cannot feel that the internal body temperature, and as a result, they won't be able to experience whatever that they're experiencing right now. But also, they have noticed that the conversations around heat exposure and menstrual health is one that is not being discussed. So they have come up also, or rather, they have established climate resilient cafes within the informal settlements, whereby this has created a platform for them to be able to easily access peer-to-peer counseling, and they can sort of start to raise awareness on this issue, and therefore also just reducing the stigma that surrounds the issue of menstrual health and that heat exposure. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Michelle. That's really, really interesting. And as Michelle is speaking, you can also read more about this work. We've put the link in the chat, but it would be also interesting to hear directly from people who are living this reality. I'd like to present Nancy. Nancy, Njoki, please tell us your experience directly from the ground.
So thanks so much. I'm Nancy Njoki, so a community member from Madare, the informal settlements. This is where we did the first research on putting the eye buttons. We did it in 5 households from different locations within the settlement. So extreme heat is really impacting us as women in the informal settlements. So for instance, when there's too much heat, the period flow seems to be so much. And also the time it takes, like if your periods goes for 3 days, it will be like 4 days. So it's really a bit expensive, and it comes with a cost. So you have to buy more pads. And also with these periods, you know, when some have period, at times there are mood swings. Like for me, I get some mood swings. So it really affects how I relate to my family members and to other community members. So these impacts, they can just go like for more than like 7 days. 7 days you have mood swings. 7 days you have a headache. 7 days you have a backache. So that means even your level of production will be very, very low for the 7 days which you are having your periods. And also the cost of water. So you need a lot of water. Maybe you will wash like 3 times. You need pads, more pads than usual. So maybe you use 1 pack. With the heat, you can use like 2 packets. And also even the issue of sleep. Yeah, when it is too hot, sleeping is really an issue. And you know, with most of the houses, especially in Madare, people don't put windows because of the security. So if you put a window, someone can get in through the window. So they can use the window to take something from your house, to steal something. So it's very difficult at night. You cannot open the window, and yet you are feeling hot. The air is not getting in. So, and also like mothers, you are the caregivers. So when it is hot, you are the one who will not sleep. You have to check on the kids. Is the kid sleeping? Is the kid having light clothes? So it's your role. So you have an added duty. At night, you are waking up, checking on the babies. Have they slept well? Are they hot? Are you going to remove their clothes? Are you going maybe to use a paper to just like fan them? Because most of the people don't have fans. So it's also gets stuffy in the houses. Our houses are built close to each other. So it's really stuffy, even it's difficult for people to breathe. And if you have a child with maybe a condition, a health condition, it really gets hard for you. So we also find ourselves just getting issues, yeah. So you don't have, for instance, you have a greengrocer shop. It's really difficult. You get to a lot of losses. The foods get spoiled. So you also open late. You cannot open like at 12. It's really hot at 12. So you have to wait up to 4 to be able to open your kiosk. So you get into losses. You are not able even to maintain. You are not able to maintain your customers. The customers will go. They will say this person is not serious. So you'll get into financial problems. So some of the things we are trying to do. So some things we are trying to do as women, it's to avoid using charcoal stoves. So, and when you are using a charcoal stove, you use it outside. So when you use it outside, at least your room temperature will be manageable. And also just lifting up the walls is the iron sheet. So you put another pole, the wooden pole, to make sure that your roofing is a bit higher. And also just using you can use the cardboards. Cardboard, you put cardboards around to make sure that the heat from the iron sheet does not get into the house. Also, you can sleep on the floor. So those who have cemented floor, we sleep on the floor. So it's easier, you sleep on the floor. It's a bit cooler on the floors. And also just encouraging our kids and ourselves, our households, to drink a lot of water. Drinking a lot of water, and also using fruits for the season, like watermelons. When it's hot, we have a lot of watermelons, and they are not that expensive. So it's just encouraging our family members to drink water so that they can be hydrated, and also to take fruits which are for the season. You're also just reducing movement when it's hot. It's really difficult. For instance, you have your period, it is hot. It's so hard for you to move. So you just reducing the movement. You just start moving like around 3:30 in the afternoon. And also just make sure you put like a sack cloth. There is a sack, people put water, then you cover your vegetables. For the women who are selling green vegetables, you put water in the sack, then you cover the vegetables with that sack.
Thank you so much for sharing that. As we can see and we hear from Venge's presentation earlier, there are impacts that are health-based, financial-based, the economics of having to find solutions to all of these issues in terms of menstrual health for the family, at household level, at livelihoods level. Thank you so much for sharing this experience. And one of the things you've highlighted also is the use of charcoal in homes, which resonates quite interestingly with the data findings that came out of Tanzania. So let me take this opportunity for us to hear from Mussa Raido. Perhaps you can tell us also what are the experiences in your communities and the solutions that are coming out of the informal settlements as well, that communities are coming up with.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I think you can see me direct. I'm not alone. I'm here with Usna Shichonge from the community. Maybe just a few seconds to say hi, Usna. Karibu. Yeah, thank you so much for the questions. I think I'm going to respond, and if my colleague Husna, who speaks Swahili, if she has any kind of addition and you have time, I think she'll add anything. So to answer your first question, Marcelle, on how extreme heat is impacting women and what solutions are they advancing here in Tanzania and Dar es Salaam. So I will answer these questions from the research point of view, from the data that we collected from one of the settlements here in Dar es Salaam, which is called the Combo Settlement. And but in summary, the whole of Dar es Salaam, we can say more than 70% of the people, they are living in informal settlements. But also in the places where we collected the data, Kombo, it is approximately has more than 20,000 people, where 51 of the population, they are women. And coming back to the question, so extreme heat is increasingly affecting women across, the urban informal settlements here in Dar es Salaam, because this is where homes trap heat, but also the access to cooling is very limited. And from Kombo, where we collected, household survey or questionnaires, more than 200 respondents. We did some focus group discussion and collected the quantitative data using the eye buttons. We found that women often spend long hours cooking over charcoal by more than 80%. But also some are using firewood, especially the food vendors, where more than 46% of the women, they are food vendors within the Kombo settlement. So this also reflecting more of many informal settlements where we have got a lot of women as well. But also women, they are there to care for the children, where they are more sitting or staying inside, experiencing more heat indoor. But also some of them, they're running small businesses or shops, which exposes them to more intense indoor heat, but also the outdoor temperature, which threatens their lives, their health and their productivity as well. And yet we see that despite these challenges here in Dar es Salaam, women are not only victims of climate change. Our research shows that women, they are also leaders to the solutions to heat issues. So across the settlement, we have seen that women are adapting to heat by shifting, cooking times to cooler hours, but also promoting improved cooking technologies. As Husna here, I think she will explain later on. There are some opportunities from the local government level, at the municipal level and the regional level, to provide women with loans to improve their clean cooking technologies, so to avoid the impact of heat. But also we have seen some of the communities, women, they are also there at the front line, trying to plant some trees, to create sheds, working with other community members, organizing some community groups to share kind of climate information or early warning weather information, to advocate for more safer housing and energy access loans as well. But also we see that these actions show that women are supported with, if women are supported with resources, knowledge and decision-making through researchers like this, we think they might become more powerful agents of climate resilience to their families and the communities as well. But also, am I supposed to answer the second question on how, how has collecting data?
Thanks very much, Mussa. Let's also hear now from Zimbabwe before we move to the next question. So I'll just, Teo from Zimbabwe, working in Kariba, just to ask you the same question. How is extreme heat impacting women in the communities in Kariba? And what solutions are they advancing alongside from what you've heard already from Kenya and Tanzania? So I'll pass on to Teo.
Okay, thank you so much. So in Zimbabwe, we did our data collection in Kariba, which is Kwari, Mambakembe, and Batonga. And we actually found out that women and girls are responsible for water collection and the general household water management within their communities or within their households, which is on top of existing care responsibilities that they actually have. And this is also intensified by the rising temperature and the heat within Kariba town. In the hottest month in Kariba, usually temperatures exceed like 40 degrees, and women still have to walk long distances to go and fetch water 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers away, carrying 20 liters, 25-liter buckets on their heads. This exposes them to dehydration, dizziness, headaches, and heat exhaustion as well. And with the rising temperatures with the heat, there's also high demand of water usage within the households, and which means they have to frequently fetch more water because the household is using more water. And I think they've been trying to adapt to this. They try to go and fetch early in the morning, or they go to fetch water towards the end of day. And the town, the Kariba town, is a lot of wildlife. So I find that is the same time also where the wildlife goes to find some water, and then there's a lot of human-wildlife conflict. And also, they are also trying to come up with practical solutions where they are trying to liaise with the local authority so that they can have access to water, like some water points in their own area.
Thanks so much, Teo. That's really interesting. So as we can see, and following again from Venge and Nyirongo's research, infrastructure plays a really important part of the impact of heat as well, and needs to be thought about in terms of resilience. When we consider our resilience efforts, we make that connection between the impact for women, specifically around access to water and heat. So on to the second question, we'll go back again to Kenya. This time we want to ask, just one second, so let's think about how we are shifting these dynamics in our communities. One of the things that's very key from the work that we've done is to consider the methodologies and approaches we've used, which are community-led. Hence the reason why we're here today, hearing directly from the communities. Part of it, a very important part of the collection of that data is that the data belongs to those communities. So the training, the involvement, the enumeration has to take into consideration those impacts of both men and women, but not only in terms of the data, but also in the processes we use. So my question now to you in Kenya is, how is collecting the heat data supported gender-responsive, community-led adaptation efforts in Matare? Perhaps I can go to you first, Michelle.
Yes, thank you, Marcelle. I think, first of all, even from the approach that we used, it was mainly participatory in nature, meaning we trained community members to be able to measure this heat within the selected households that we chose. And I think that was a very, very great step in terms of just trying to document this. But also, apart from that, trying to just document the specific shifts in temperature, and also now the related household costs and even just the economic losses that they face, has been a critical step in just ensuring that climate adaptation also has that gender lens. Because you'll find that most of the discussions around climate adaptation, they really focus on the reproductive health of women. And I think this is a conversation, or rather a gap, that now needs to be given more emphasis on the same, and to also be addressed and to be amplified even within our societies. Because at the end, you'll find that even when it just comes to the impacts of heat, most of them are quite invisible, and you can't easily tell that this is an impact unless you really, really dig through it. So you'll find that this data makes those invisible struggles to become visible in the society. But even once now they become visible, it gives a room for the policymakers to be able to see then how we able to address this. Because again, you cannot address the aspects of heat exposure and its impacts without also just looking at the integration with different sectors, such as water, such as sanitation. And with this, you'll find that it sort of provides more room for having the targeted interventions, whereby you're able to just use the community generated data that helps to identify what are some of the priorities that you need to address first of all. And I believe this information, or this evidence that we have been able to gather, will also give the communities, and especially even just through Muungano and Wanavijiji Federation, an opportunity to be able to approach different policymakers, the government, and to demand just for the improved infrastructure within their settlement, so that again they're able to address some of these lived realities that they keep on experiencing at the settlement level. So at the end of it all, we are just seeing the data that has been collected as a powerful advocacy tool that community members can utilize in order to demand for climate justice, because again, you cannot talk about health without talking about the issues of reproductive health of women, because majority of the times that health angle is usually just on urban health. But what if we go in depth inside the health sector? I'm just thinking of it as an advocacy tool that communities can now start to use to also just champion for some of the interventions that they need at the settlement level. Yeah, thank you.
Right, thanks, Mussa. And let's also hear from Kenya very briefly. Kenya, we can speak again to Mussa. Oh, sorry, I forgot Nancy. Yes, Nancy, please tell us.
Thanks so much. So what we've been doing from the data, so we've had meetings just to give back the reports to the community members. And what we are doing is just creating awareness within ourselves, and especially for the men, the young fathers, to really appreciate and support their ladies when they are going through difficult times during these heat seasons. And also some of the youth groups, they've started fund drive to support other vulnerable people by donating pads. So they are doing pads drives. So they get funds from local community members, and they buy pads and give to vulnerable people, because it's very costly for a woman in the informal settlements who is also not having maybe a source of employment. We're also having peer-to-peer exchanges, just learning from each other. Like, for instance, why are we not supposed to use jiko when it is hot? What food should we eat when it's hot? So basically, that's what we are doing, and also having young women joining the groups which are doing climate-related works like planting of trees and also creation of parks. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Mussa from Tanzania.
Yes, Marcelle. I think when it comes to collecting data, how is it supporting gender responsive communities-led adaptation? So from the study that we did, I see that collecting, local heat data, especially the indoor data, has become a powerful tool for supporting gender responsive kind of community-led adaptation as well. So because when communities, especially women, are involved in measuring or documenting the temperature inside homes or cooking areas or centers like markets and the streets, it is kind of supporting them to generate more evidence that clearly shows where and when heat exposure is most severe. But also data from Combo has given us, huge visibility to understand everyday experience of women who spend long hours cooking, caring for families, or running small businesses in hot environments. For instance, we have got Vingunguti slaughtering house, but also Kwasimba market, where there's a lot of women. And with this kind of information, we see that communities are better able to advocate for practical solutions, such as improve the housing ventilation when they have kind of relevant economic support to support that, but also the issues of clean cooking energy to shift it from different sources in order to adapt to heat, or to participate mainly in awareness campaigns or planting of trees within the settlement and so on. So the most important thing is that ensuring that the climate adaptation strategies are grounded in lived realities and respond to direct the needs of those most affected. But also we have seen some women and other kind of social groups as well. They do not even have secondary education, but they are happy to be part of the team which is collecting data, which is mobilizing the community to take a certain kind of action when it comes to reducing the impact of heat. But also I was talking to Husna here, she has an addition that with this kind of study that we have done, we have seen that we have expanded our understanding to understand the issue of heat because we are living in the coastal city, so it's usually we are normalizing the issue of heat, the impact of heat, but through the participation of different people, especially the community members and the women as well, to do the data collection, to participate in the analysis and to come up with these kind of findings, we have been able to understand how huge the problem of heat is there, how huge some factors like cooking sources or choices, they are influencing the impact of extreme heat to the community. So my message to all of you as partners listening now, so let us support heat, gender responsive, community-led data collection for effective and sustainable adaptation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mussa, and thank you for putting that out there to all our participants. Just moving on now to Zimbabwe. Teo, how is your community using the data that you've been collecting on heat, supporting gender responsive community-led adaptations? Over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I think the collection of data itself, which was community-led, really put the invisible burden of women and heat, which I think the perception itself in Kariba was like, the city is already hot, so what are you collecting about? But I think because this was community-led, and the women themselves were telling authorities that we are being impacted by these rising temperatures and the heat. So we really started to see the change from there, from the perception itself. And also by combining the temperature data that we're collecting and with community experiences, also it was shown that heat, exposure during water collection, and the other domestic chores, the domestic work that the women will be doing is also a major issue. And also it's overlooked in terms of climate risks for women. And also the evidence is strengthened community advocacy, highlighting to local authorities and policymakers that are within this city that water insecurity is both a climate and gender justice issue. It's not just a service delivery issue. And also the data that we collected through this research empowered communities to start proposing gender responsive adaptation solutions. So now, after women are now aware of the impacts of heat and how it is impacting them in terms of water scarcity, water collection, and other household chores, they are really making an effort to advocate, to propose for gender responsive adaptation solutions, such as having like water points in their communities. They are also collecting this year data, also empowered women, and they've enabled them to share experiences and participate in shaping climate resilient solutions. So in this city, there's a climate change committee at the district level, which women were not much participating in. And now, because they're empowered through this community-led data collection, they were really keen to participate in that committee, and they really wanted to share their experiences and contribute to solutions, because now they really understand what they are facing, and they actually have the evidence through this research, through community-led data collection.
Fantastic, Theo. Thank you so much to all our panelists from the three different contexts. We have probably time for one quick question. Maybe we can take the one from Rose to any of the panelists. What kind of materials are relevant to be used for resilience to heat? And presently, what materials are being used? To any of our grassroots panelists?
Okay. So in Kariba, in the three settlements, they are really diverse. One of the settlements that we have, they are currently using pole and dagger to build their houses. But unfortunately, then they roof with iron sheets. And unfortunately, they have very low roofs, and it's really very hot. They have very small windows. And then the other settlement, they have like structures with iron sheets completely, which really absorb the heat, and they resort to cooking outside instead of inside. But also do have like the brick and cement houses, But unfortunately, the rooms are very small because most of them are using one room and for a whole family, and they are really hot. And also, these houses are built using standards that are used the whole country, despite the difference in temperatures. So I think what we're advocating for was really revising the housing plans in Kariba as well, so that they build houses that are appropriate for that hot area that they stay in. And also, I think we have committed to working with the University of Zimbabwe Research Center there to do a research actually on what materials really suit that kind of region.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Teo. So yes, I think we have a similar material use in both Tanzania and Kenya. Perhaps we can hear from our other colleagues.
Yes, Marcelle. I think a question of Rose, it is relating to materials. I'm not sure if it's material for roofing or the bricks, but in our context here in Tanzania, I can say most of people, for instance, at Combo, the pilot study for settlement, it's like more than 90% of people are using iron sheets to cover their roofs. But also there's a challenge for some dwellers due to income issues. They do not even have the sailing boards above the houses, so it is kind of contributing to more heat inside the houses. But also there are some community members in some areas where they have been using these interlocking bricks. They have been proved to be more heat resilient, unlike where most of people here in the city, they're using the cement bricks, which traps more heat, unlike these kind of interlocking bricks. But also the issue of material is not only about material, but also there's the issue of nature. If houses are built in the areas with maybe a lot of trees surrounding it, so we have seen the heat, it is not that much compared to the areas where there are no tree coverage and so on, but also the congestion, this informal settlement, there's high congestion. So some areas, some people might not experience heat, unlike some areas where there is extra congestion and lack of trees as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Musa. We also have another question on which maybe I will direct to Michelle from Kenya. Michelle, we have a question from our audience asking, the question is about how governments are responding to the results of the research. Can you tell us how you're finding stakeholder and governments responding to the work in Matare?
Yes. So first of all, it has provided an opportunity for the government to start to also see that heat impacts are very valid especially within these informal settlements, and to start to relook at some of the interventions that they're currently doing on the ground. Because you'll find, for instance, if it's in the case of flooding is known, like it happens. The impacts are very, very visible. But when it comes to heat, you really, really have to dig deeper through it to be able to understand. But I had mentioned that you'll find that with these impacts, and even just from the research that we have done, how we are starting to showcase some of the impacts of the heat, then it becomes also an opportunity for the government officials to start to know how then do they tap into the findings. Like, for instance, especially the ones that deal with the environment, they're starting to now relook at, if at all it's the nature-based solutions, how can they then support community members in terms of the nature-based solutions at the community level, but also to bring an opportunity or an aspect of the passive cooling at the settlement level, so that you're not only looking at the issue of livelihoods, but you're also looking at the issue of how do you then naturally cool a settlement using the little resources that are available at the community level, so that again, community members are not able to face the impacts that they're currently facing right now. So those are some of the things that we are actually witnessing. I know it's a work in progress, considering that this is now a topic that is now starting to be discussed, even just worldwide. And we are seeing that once we are just able to continuously do this participatory research, especially on the heat and how to measure it, and also just be able to utilize these impacts, or rather utilize the findings to know what are some of the impacts that the community members are facing, then as a result, it might be able to now start to shift the mindset of government officials, policymakers to start to look at what are some of the things that they can actually do within their capacity to support in terms of cooling of these settlements. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle. I think this is a perfect time to move into our next session. I'd like to invite as our next speaker Dr. Bessy Kathambi from Nairobi University, who can elaborate further for us on the importance of institutional partnerships in supporting this gender responsive community-led data. The integration, as you were suggesting, Michelle, we need to think about the integration of these into decision-making processes, and then just thinking about how those spaces can be enabling environments for thinking more about how heat and other climatic risks are more broadly impacting and leaving vulnerable communities exposed. So let me hand over to you, Dr. Bessy. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Bessy is an environmental sociologist and a gender specialist focused on social equity and ecological sustainability. She examines how climate change affects marginalized groups, especially women in informal settlements across Africa. She's working within the projects of Tuwe Pamoja, which is also looks at promoting community-driven adaptation that will support the empowerment of vulnerable populations for climate resilience. Welcome, Dr. Bessy.
All right, thank you very much, Marcelle, for having me here. And it's amazing hearing the many things that the communities are doing and how we get to intertwine with the results, the data we are collecting. And I want to put a disclaimer, as my slides are put up, is that I am not excluding men in this conversation. They are part and parcel of what we do, and they are with us. But today, allow me to just pay attention more to what the women are doing and give voice to the women, because there is something that we need to see at the end of the day. So I'll look at the woman, the institution. If I take, for example, the case studies that you're launching today on the issue of urban heat. Urban heat sounds cliche, you know? It sounds that maybe it's something that, does it really exist? Is it sure? Are you sure people in the coast, like in Tanzania, that this exists by itself? So when we find institutions like IIED, SDI, Dialogue on Shelter, Center for Community Initiatives, all these institutions are coming in to offer why we need to have that kind of collaboration to raise the voice of the woman. I've heard of the issue of urban heat on menstruation. We looked at why solution to something that is not just a blanket. It works differently. It affects different age groups, different presenter said that the disparities, the changes, the differences, the dynamics that exist within this particular aspect cannot just be a blanket aspect. So institutions are coming in, and that collaboration makes sure that every party and every person to this particular research is considered. So that's why I believe institutions are amplifying the woman's voice. We would not have known that Nancy, who exists in Mathare, will have mood swings because of urban heat. Yeah, and the cost of having her have more sanitary towels because of that urban heat institutions that we have today, we are now getting to pay attention. We're getting to pay attention to the kind of indoor pollution that would affect Mussa and the people in Tanzania because of that heat from one being near the ocean, yeah? And all these things are coming in from the point of institutions. Also, it's from these institutions that we offer the voice of the woman a place to be heard. The era of giving women handouts is long gone. So we want more women on the table and not on the menu. So these institutions are here giving us information that would have more or less generalized and not done. Why we also give these institutions are giving women more voices to their capacity. Look at the solutions that have been given out. Yeah, it's amazing that we have not taken up such kind of innovations to take them much higher. But now we have institutions, the partnering, the governments that we're asking about. What will they do now that these people within these institutions, whether formal or informal, are getting to give solutions that are homegrown? Therefore, sustainability will be a reality for them. And it will have more impact because there's ownership. And that's what these institutions give. They give credence to the woman as well, to the power of women, being resilient. I can imagine that mother who Nancy was describing has to wake up, make sure the children, the heat is not burning them, has to make sure food is on the table, has to wake up and prepare for all this unpaid care, yes, and still have to handle herself, all that, still become resilient to survive and make impact when it comes to data collection of what it is we need to do. So what are the way forward, or what is that recommendation that we would give in terms of how institutions need to weave the community in the process? One of the outstanding work is what IIED and SDI at the Centers for Community Initiative, the dialogue on shelter, have done. There's an example that when we work together, we get better results. We get to those things that we never get. We get to unearth issues that maybe would have passed along and said, this is something they don't need. And we make decisions on a basis that are not correct. So it is out of this that we are saying that what we need to do is support each other as partners to collect gender responsive, hearing both from men, people living with disabilities, the youth, the elderly, the men and the women. Everybody has, and the children as well, because they also have a voice that needs to be amplified in this particular setups. Urban heat, when we started talking about it in the research world, it sounded like it's another greenwashing that is common in climate change. But the reality of seeing such a report, hearing from people who live with it, experience it, makes it different. Therefore, our responses to our policies will be very different. What they need, yes, will be amplified more by how these institutions work together. We also need that peer-to-peer learning. When I see the work being done in Zimbabwe by Teurai, is to bring the materials that could work best. Yeah, we could try them in Nairobi, we could try them in Tanzania. And all this is a learning to learning aspect where we build each other's capacity and we get to grow groups to see how our situation is changing, how do we improve on here, and how do we get to get people moving away from a situation of victim to victors in this issue of urban heat. And finally is building the skills. Yes, I believe today when Nancy speaks, when Michelle speaks, when Mussa speaks, it is not from a point of now they know better. And because they know better, then they can improve on what is there. So let me conclude by saying, women, maybe they have not realized that they are institutions by themselves. And because they are institutions, they have that ability and the capacity and the potential to influence, to touch more, to change more there is the more in a woman in an institution and the woman as an institution. So if we amplify this issue of getting institutions together, then even with the situations we are in a climate changing world, then we have solutions that can take us beyond and make us resilient. Thank you very much, Marcelle. Back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Bessy. That was a fantastic contribution. So as we've looked at the theoretical landscape around gender and heat. We've talked about gender and heat at the global level. Then we've come round to all the communities. We've spoken to them. We've understood the way they work, heard from the ground how heat is impacting, and we've come round to understanding the importance of institutional contribution to this work. So just to finalize, I'd like to invite Dr. Wayne Shand, who is an associate at IIED, who has also been contributing to this work and the broader data measurement heat work. I think we put a link to the latest publication from Dr. Wayne, the community, and myself earlier on in the presentation. Please go ahead, Dr. Wayne Shand, and just finish off this event with some closing remarks. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Marcelle, and congratulations to everybody for such a rich discussion and sharing of evidence. I think I'd probably focus on 3 or 4 things. So if we can have the next slide, please. Obviously, we've focused a lot on the sort of gaps in data, but also sort of underlined the fact that the lack of data leads to a lack of attention on the very specific issues and the gender differences that we're seeing from heat. So we've highlighted today a number of the sort of real and practical impacts that are hidden for gender issues about the levels of differential exposure between men and women to heat, some of the impacts on health and livelihoods, and the additional burdens that women face, particularly in caring roles or collecting water in the home. And I think really the action we should take from this is the importance through all of our work really to continue to collect this information and to ensure that we're able to evidence and demonstrate the connections between gender, environment and urban equality, and use that really as a basis to look at the sorts of interventions and actions that we can take at a local level. Secondly, just to sort of follow on, I think what we've seen today is really some of the amazing work that's been done by communities and their NGO partners to generate some of this new evidence, which is really vitally important to expose some of the hidden risks and impacts that we've discussed. But we also need to find a way to make sure that this data and evidence is integrated into the policies and the plans that are being developed at a city and national level. And I think really the action for us around this area is to continue to involve city government and the meteorological agencies in our country to really include some of this local data that's being collected and to integrate it into the policy debates and the policy documents that are being produced. We know how difficult it is, and I think it really takes a push from the grassroots level to connect with local politicians and agencies in your cities, but also for some of the colleagues in national government and the international agencies really to encourage national governments to sort of pick up this evidence and to give it value and to integrate it properly. And then really the sort of third area really is about how we sort of integrate this into some of the work that we're doing, both at a policy level, as we mentioned, but also to make sure that there's continuing local ownership, that actually communities can use this information effectively to inform their decisions, to build better responses and coping mechanisms, but also I think in this gender space to try and reshape some of the social expectations that add to the additional risks that women face. Just the final slide now summarizes, I think, some of the key points. But I think overall, what we'd want to take from the discussion and the case studies is that climate justice really does begin in cities, and women have a key role as participants and in leadership positions to inform the collection of data and to underpin really how we develop climate resilient cities. It's a very inadequate summary of what's been discussed, but hopefully that helps to focus on some of the actions, Marcelle.
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Wenge. And yes, and you're right. There's just so much content in here. It's very difficult to go into more of the nitty-gritty detail. As we've seen, some people in the chat would love to see more around water. Just to say a massive thank you today for everyone who's participated. Please do feel free to come along. We have another event next week coming. But just before that, I'd just like to say thank you to the communities in particular who have been collecting this data. I'd like to say a big thank you to the colleagues at IIED who have joined us today. Karen, Matt, Roxana, and Arifa, who has been involved in the research work as well. For those who would like to see more, there is another event next week, From Land Rights to a Gender Just Economy, Lessons from Indigenous Women, and that's next week, Tuesday on the 17th. Please do feel free to come along and register. We have plenty of information out there in our social media and on our website. Just to also say, if you haven't had a chance to engage more directly, please do feel free to send us an email asking any further questions. Drop us your email address, and we'd be happy to answer any questions beyond this and send out any presentations. Thank you, Venge and Nyirongo as well. Thank you, Dr. Bessy. Thank you so much for all of your contributions, and we look forward to continuing this work together across those three affiliates. Thank you so much.